good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Cavallo's Commitment to SalesPad for GP. My name is Elizabeth Morris. I'm the event manager here at Cavallo. I'd like to be the very first to thank all of you for spending an hour with us this afternoon. We have a very robust presentation to share with all of you. Before our speakers introduce themselves, I just want to cover a couple items. You can expect about a 45-minute presentation today, and we're going to leave close to 15 minutes at the end for your questions. Use that Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen to ask questions throughout the presentation. So if light bulb goes off in your head, don't take time, don't wait to ask it, just ask it now and we'll get to it at the very end. If we're not able to get to all the questions, we will follow up with each of you individually following the webinar. We are recording today, which means that you'll be able to view the webinar on demand. You will be able to find it on our YouTube channel as well as the events page on our website. I am joined by Cavallo's Senior Product Manager, Alyssa Strand, Distribution Strategy Advisor, Paul McClellan, and CEO Mike Biwer. Together, we are going to share our 10-plus year promise to support GP and SalesPad, as well as our continued growth. We have so much to cover, so buckle up. And without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to our first presenter to introduce herself, and then we'll go from there.
Awesome. Yeah, hello, everyone. My name is Alyssa Strand, and I am the Senior Product Manager for the SalesPad suite of applications. So I've been with Cavallo about 8 years at this point. It'll actually be 9 in the spring, so getting up there. And I'm located at our headquarters in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So I have 3 feline fur babies at home, and I'm currently playing a lot of Hades 2 and Hogwarts Legacy, so it feels like the right time of year for some Harry Potter throwbacks.
Hello, everybody. My name is Paul McClellan. I'm Distribution Strategy Advisor here at Cavallo. I come from 30 years experience in distribution, including owning and operating lightbulbs.com. I currently live in Minnesota with my wife and our 9 children. I enjoy technology. I love seeing how it can improve business functionality. And I was a software developer for almost 35 years prior to coming here. Growing up with technology in the 80s, I'm also a huge 80s rock fan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Biwer, and I'm the CEO of Cavallo. I remember the first time I actually saw SalesPad. I think it was almost 7 years ago to the day, and it was love at first sight. The demo that our founder gave me was the beginning of my journey here at Cavallo. I could see the power in SalesPad instantly, and I wanted to be part of the company's future growth. And that's why I'm here today. I actually disagree with Paul about 80s music. I think 70s music is way better, and it's not because of my age. Like Elizabeth, I also want to thank everyone joining us today for a discussion about the future of GP and SalesPad, especially to our customers here today. We exist for you and because of you. We've seen what so many of you have put into building the great business you now manage and lead, and we're grateful to be part of your journey. Our journey as a tech company, I'm going to switch to the story of our founding now. Our journey as a tech company didn't start with the goal of being a tech company. It started with Pete. This is Pete here. I think this is Pete's very first order as a distributor in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Pete had an outsized vision for how to run an insanely efficient and profitable business. He chose GP knowing full well that it would not deliver everything that he wanted, everything that he envisioned. It was simply a solid and reputable foundation upon which he could apply his personal brilliance and magic. Then feature by feature, Pete and his team built out software on top of GP to enable his dream. It was only after achieving breakthrough results himself that he realized others could benefit like he did, and he formally launched SalesPad. Anyone that knows Pete knows that this goal in a nutshell at the bottom is true. Pete had a huge ambition. He wanted to 10x the industry best profit margins and work half time. Pete would often go to work in the morning, or actually would get up in the morning, and his wife would say, "Hey, Pete, are you going to fish, hunt, play golf, or work today?" He really had dialed in his business based on this technology, and he wanted to share it with the world. So 1,000 customers later, here we are. His goal was to maximize efficiency, turbocharge speed and decision-making, and drive his gross margins to their full potential. Not because Pete is greedy, he just likes to win. Let me go to the next slide, our why. That's a good segue to our why. Our why is we aspire to make our customers' businesses immensely more profitable, competitive, and valuable. This saying, this mantra is on every screen in our building. It's in every presentation that we do as a company. This has always been important to us, and hopefully you'll see that with what we have to talk about today. I now want to shift to the fork in the road. We're here today to acknowledge the decision every GP customer must eventually face. Do I stay or do I go? Do I continue on GP or do I replace it entirely? And our guidance is simple. You should do what's best for your business, not someone else's, and on your timeline, not someone else's. Our primary objective today is to reinforce our commitment to you as SalesPad customers. At some point, you chose Dynamics GP as the foundation of your operations, the base layer your business was built on. And over the years, enabled by SalesPad, hopefully assisted by SalesPad, you turned it into the operating system of your business, brick by brick, process by process, order by order. It became the way your business runs, uniquely yours, built through years of hard work, continuous learning, and targeted refinement. And I think we all know this, ERPs are, by design, systems of record. What you have built through years of hard work is likely a system of competitive advantage, not a system of record. ERPs do what they're supposed to do. They count the beans. They contain the beans. They enable common process. They are not designed to create competitive advantage. That's what you have done. And we believe this. The only reason you should replace your ERP is because you have decided it's in your best interest, not because of someone else's strategic interest or constraints. Here's another truth. There's not a single ERP on the planet that's designed to easily replace what you've carefully crafted over the years. If anyone says otherwise, ask them to prove it. Our intention, by the way, isn't to be one-sided about one ERP or another. We support customers on both GP and BC. We have analytics products serving many different ERP systems. We just have conviction that the choice should be yours based on your unique business case. Paul, I'd like to now pass it to you to share your own experience and some information about the GP timeline and implications.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mike. Yes, as I mentioned before, I was a user of SalesPad before I joined the team over here. I want to talk a little bit about my experience with my previous company, lightbulbs.com. So who is lightbulbs.com? Before I joined this company here, I spent 30 years at this business. We were one of the earliest pioneers of e-commerce, launching our website in 1996. In the late 90s and early 2000s, we harnessed the power of the internet and grew rapidly, pushing our ERP to its limit. So we hit the market looking for more robust ERP solutions that would help us handle our volume. But we were on the fence with several of them as they didn't completely solve all of our business problems. That was until 2008. A couple minutes ago, Mike mentioned the first time seeing SalesPad, and I remember the first day I demoed SalesPad over 17 years ago. And it completely blew me away how intuitive it was and how much it would help my business with the growing pains we were experiencing. Because of these critical features that SalesPad enabled us in our business, we migrated to GP in 60 days with 0 issues. Since then, by utilizing the workflow automation and the special sauce inside of SalesPad, we 3x'd our annual volume. We transacted over $215 million, and we processed over 3 million sales orders flawlessly. The workflow automation built inside of SalesPad removed risk from both our ERP migration and into the future with the day-to-day functionality. So you can imagine that our heavy integration into GP and SalesPad were such a large part of our success story. About 2.5 years ago, I was still operating lightbulbs.com when I started hearing news of a change coming to GP's long-term support. It's actually one of the very reasons that I'm working here at Cavallo today. Back in 2023, I connected with Cavallo and I learned much more about these end of support rumors that were circulating. One of the burning questions I had, which many of you viewers might have as well, is how long can I continue to run GP before there are issues? And as I often ask Cavallo, what if I want to stay on GP forever? All right, before we look into the future, let's take a brief look at the past. There's a lot of important dates on this slide and a lot of technical points that I want to discuss. So GP, formerly known as Great Plains, grew from Fargo, North Dakota in 1981 to an international presence and future acquisition by Microsoft in 2001. After this acquisition, tens of thousands of businesses utilized GP and took advantage of its scalable database structure and powerful accounting logic. The second date there, in 2016, Microsoft brought GP into their Dynamics 365 family as they continued to grow in their connected apps cloud infrastructure. Very important, the third date, September of 24, just over a year ago, Microsoft officially announced their end of support timeline for GP. And so we're going to get to those last two dates in just a minute. Before we do that, I want to establish how GP and SalesPad are actually working together. At the very core, GP is using Microsoft SQL. SQL is a relational database management system that houses all of your GP data, and it includes some powerful business logic. GP, as you know it, at its core, it's an interface. It's a way for you to interact with your business data that's saved inside of SQL. Now, SalesPad is also an interface. It's one that supercharges the features inside of GP and brings loads of new database fields and functionality into that experience. So both GP and SalesPad require SQL to work, but neither one requires the other to function on its own. So we'll jump back to our timeline now, December of 2029. This signals the end of Microsoft support, which means that regulatory data updates like payroll and sales tax, that will stop. Now, you should know there are businesses out there that are working on other ways of populating GP with this type of data, should your company need it to function. And the final date, April of 2031. The security updates that are ending here on this date refer to security patches and the core program itself. But you know that GP resides on a server protected by firewalls and other security measures, so inherently it's not a very large risk. Hypothetically, if a hacker breached your firewall and was inside your network, they generally are not going to be very interested in stealing payables data or looking at your inventory. Now, this is also the date that Microsoft has indicated that users can no longer purchase new seats or licenses. So we're going to get super technical for a minute. We're going to talk about databases. If you are concerned about long-term business continuity inside of GP, this part is actually really critical. As mentioned before, SalesPad does not necessarily need GP to run, it needs SQL. SQL, the database language, is not being impacted by these sunset timelines that you see on the screen. Each version of SQL has a minimum of 10 years of support, and Microsoft has announced publicly that they will support Windows and SQL up to 2029. So if you ensure that you are patching your installs of Windows, SQL, and GP, then you are extending your streamlined functionality and uptime well beyond the 2031 end of security timeline. What this means is that you keep your systems current. It's around 14 years before you have any significant concerns about GP not functioning as intended. And even then, there are solutions being put in place to ensure continuity into the future. I know we went over a lot and that was highly technical, so a very quick recap. GP will not stop working after the April 30th, 2031 timeframe. It can continue functioning as intended up to and past 14 years. There's no rush to move away from GP if it is working for you today. But as Mike said, the decision is yours. It just does not need to be motivated out of any sense of fear. Aside from the peace of mind in knowing that your GP systems are safely functional for many years to come, I also want to inform you that there's an additional long-term support with a new alliance called the Knights of GP. This group is comprised of community of users, partners, and software developers that are joining forces to ensure long-term functionality of GP, including cloud hosting options. And Mike, I'll let you take it from here.
Paul, I enjoyed you nerding out there a bit on the technology. Well done. I think on this ecosystem support and the NICE of GP, the main point that I have is that there's a solid and growing list of like-minded companies coming together to support the business leaders who choose to stay the course on GP and protect that investment that they've made over many, many years. I'd like to make a big shout out here to Ingevity for leading this charge and the energy and the passion that they bring to it. It's remarkable and well done. Next slide. Let's talk about risk a little bit. When people talk about ERP migration, it often sounds simple. Like you're just moving your data from one system to another, but it's way more complicated than that. It reminds me of a time when I was speaking with a really smart data scientist in a former life, and he explained his model to me, and I said, that sounds like a complex nonlinear regression model. And he looked at me like I was dumb and said, it's not that simple. So ERP implementations are way more complicated than people like to say. Let me see if I can advance the slide a minute. There we go. One of the first things you have to do is rebuild your data. It has to be cleaned, reshaped, and remapped to fit an entirely different data model. That alone can take months. It's often a place where projects can slip. You're also rebuilding your processes. Every ERP has its own native assumptions, how orders flow, how purchasing works, how inventory is handled, how exceptions are managed. What worked in your current system rarely lines up one for one with the new platform. So your team ends up redesigning workflows from scratch. You just have to go into it eyes wide open, knowing that. In terms of custom logic, you're rebuilding your automation and logic. All the rules, scripting, pricing intelligence, the SalesPad workflows you've potentially perfected over the years, those don't just migrate. They have to be recreated, often in an ERP that can't express them the same way. And finally, you're rebuilding your business rhythm. Your people have to relearn everything. New screens, new steps, new approvals, new exceptions. It's often the case, it's expected, that productivity is going to drop for a period of time. Mistakes spike. Operations get bumpy until the reorganization or the organization itself restabilizes. So when someone says ERP migration, it sounds like a move, but the truth is clearer. This isn't just a move, it's a rebuild. Let's look at some of the facts. And nothing here isn't available publicly. I've personally been a part of ERP implementations a lot throughout my career. They're exceptionally hard and not to be taken lightly. You know, Deloitte's research, and this research has been around for many, many years. Deloitte finds that 55 to 75% of ERP implementations fail in some way or fall short of goals. Gartner says only 25% of organizations describe their ERP migration as successful. Again, that depends on whatever their standard was, right? And Panorama Consulting Group says up to 50% of ERP projects fail to deliver on the target ROI. These are just facts. We're just trying to be truthful and honest and make sure that as you go into this decision yourself, that you're looking at it with eyes wide open. I now want to move to a case study that, speaking of Ingevity, actually, I guess I have one more slide here. I wanted to just use this slide to highlight the relationship between, on the x-axis, current systems complexity, and on the y-axis, ERP migration risk from a scale of 1 to 10. Obviously, the more complex, maybe the more custom your business is, the more risk you face in migrating. It doesn't mean, again, don't do it. It just means know what the risks are. There's always going to be risk of some sort in an ERP migration. Let me give you a real-world case study. This is actually a case that is on Ingevity's website. You can find it there. It's based on a company called New Star Sourcing. They were a long-time GP customer who, like some of you, were told that moving to Business Central was the clear and natural next step. They spent over a year preparing, invested well over 6 figures, and trusted that the experts in the ecosystem would guide them safely through the transition. What actually happened wasn't that. Within days of going live, their operation descended into chaos. They hit missing functionality, broken processes, lost efficiency, massive disruption to day-to-day operations. In the article, they described the experience, I think this is the title of the article, as 7 weeks of hell. And after all that time, effort, and money spent, they ultimately had to abandon the new ERP altogether and returned to GP just to stabilize the business. Neustar's story is important because it's not unusual. It's what happens when a highly customized, finely tuned GP plus SalesPad environment is forced into a system that wasn't designed to replicate what they had already built. Their experience reinforces a simple truth. ERP migrations aren't simple upgrades. They're rebuilds. And for many businesses, the risk is real, especially when you already have a finely tuned operating system that works. In terms of a couple of stats here, from Neustar's point of view, and by the way, I'm going to be talking about a webinar coming up next month where Neustar will present. I'm looking forward to that. 10 years of GP stability regained. They're now working at 3 to 5 times faster, actually like they were before, after moving back from BC to GP. And one of the quotes from their president, who's a big advocate of longevity of GP now, and certainly of Cavallo, things that would take us 2 to 3 keystrokes or clicks in SalesPad, even on its best day, Business Central was a 10-step process for that same action. The team was getting very frustrated with the inefficiencies, and they made a quick decision. Let me now shift to our commitment. Our promise is simple. It's very simple. We are here. I've been saying this every year when we get up on stage in front of our customer base. We're here for the long haul. Cavallo will support SalesPad for GP for at least the next 10 years and longer for customers who continue to rely on it. Because our commitment isn't to a timeline, it's to the people and businesses who've built their success with us. Now, Alyssa, I'd like to pass it to you to share how we continue to invest heavily in our SalesPad products.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mike, and hello again, everyone. So we've come out with a ton of new features for SalesPad over the past year or so. So I'm going to touch on some of the most impactful updates, including a few that are actually coming out very soon. And then I'll tease some big new ideas that we're evaluating for 2026. As you'll see, we're not slowing down on expanding or improving SalesPad. If anything, we're going faster. We're creating big new features to enhance your productivity. We're bringing AI into SalesPad, and we're continuing to level up the areas that your business really runs on. So our next big upcoming release will bring AI into SalesPad. Profit Max platform paints a picture of your customer health by calculating ABCD scores and churn risk for each customer in your system. It assigns customers an ABCD score like A or B based on how much they contribute to your business's total profitability. And then it assigns a churn risk like high or minimal based on factors like how recently and how frequently that customer has placed orders with you. So by bringing all of this into SalesPad as customer IQ, you can see these AI insights in the system you already know, empower your workflow and reporting, and fuel structured customer outreach. So you'll be able to review customer health when managing customers and processing sales orders, and this visibility can be controlled so only authorized users can see these details. There will be a new default quick report and a new visual dashboard, which are configurable reporting options in SalesPad. So you can start from an easy template and then just make a few tweaks to see whatever you need. We're creating new built-in workflow rules so that you can route sales documents and customers in workflow based on the customer's health. Maybe for D customers, which are customers who actually have negative margin in your system, you want to require their orders to have a higher margin percent or go to special workflow queues for review. And then we're also adding new automations for structured customer outreach. Automatically generate a weekly list of A customers, which are your most profitable customers, and find the ones who have a high risk of churn and have their sales reps follow up with them, re-engage, revitalize that connection. Sales reps can then work their way through a list and mark customers off as they go, or they can assign these outreach tasks to their SalesPad Today calendars so they have a scheduled time to reach out. And all of this is configurable, so you can target customers for outreach based on their ABCD score, their churn risk, or just other factors in SalesPad. So bringing customer health to SalesPad opens a world of possibilities, letting you structure and automate your process in a way that strengthens your customer relationships. Customer IQ is currently in beta, and it will be officially launched in January. Inventory Manager, our mobile WMS, has a ton of great new features, including some new advanced picking options. This is going to be a lot of information, but I'll just do quick touches on each of these. We do have public documentation on our website if you'd like to dig into any more details. So with picking assignments, pickers can be assigned to sales orders and set to only see their assignments, so they always know what to work on next and they can avoid double picking orders. With directed picking, sales orders can be fulfilled in the business's priority sequence. Pickers can be sent to pick FIFO cereals and FIFO lots, and they can be directed in a streamlined path through the warehouse. Batch picking lets pickers fulfill multiple orders at the same time, and zone picking, which is set to be released later this month actually, lets pickers hone in on the items that they can pick within their assigned zones. And all of these advanced picking features work hand in hand. So you can assign multiple sales orders to a single batch pick, assign that batch pick to a picking group, and then let directed picking guide those pickers through the warehouse to pick the needed items from their zones. Outside of the land of picking, we also have new updates for barcode management so that you can actually import new barcodes from a spreadsheet. This way you can save time whenever you're setting up new products. And most mobile lookups can now be configured to show the most relevant fields for your business, so warehouse staff can see exactly what they need to find the right document and item. We've really honed in on easier visibility and smoother sales fulfillment within Inventory Manager, so you can supercharge your pick, pack, ship process and get orders out the door faster without sacrificing on accuracy. Sales document workflow is something that practically all of our customers use, so we've been adding some handy new capabilities that can help pretty much anyone. The workflow setup screen has a newer tool where you can see your workflow in a visual flowchart. You can actually export this flowchart so you have a helpful reference for your process. There's also now a new workflow review tab in the workflow setup screen. This can help you figure out if smart printing isn't hooked up properly, if workflow rules won't trigger as expected, and more. So it's a huge time saver when you're creating and modifying workflows, helping you find these issues without needing to test through your entire process multiple times. And then we have two super new features that will actually be released this week. So there will be a new required fields tab in the sales workflow setup screen. So you can set up rules for which fields need to be filled out at each step in your workflow. Users can see these rules whenever they're entering sales orders, and they can see which requirements they're missing, and they'll be prevented from forwarding the order until all of those rules are met. This lets you control your process much more easily, and you don't need to code scripts every time you want to make sure a new required field is actually filled out. And our other big new update for workflow is introducing saved filters in Sales Monitor. So you can make all of your pick, pack, ship queues visible, save that as your pick, pack, ship filter, and then you can easily switch back to that view whenever you need, just by clicking the filter name, instead of needing to go through and uncheck and recheck all of those checkboxes every time. Every second that people can save on this screen makes it that much faster and easier to manage your sales process. And we're going to keep giving you even more visibility and control in SalesPad so you can manage and run your business in the way that works for you. We've also added some big new features to our integrations over the past year or so. Again, lots of new stuff to cover here. I'll just run through at a high level. We have an entirely new integration with HubSpot for keeping customers and contacts in sync between the ERP and CRM and sending product and sales doc information from SalesPad out to HubSpot. So this really helps you stop doubling up on data entry because it automates those updates. For e-commerce integrations, we've added new options to automatically send invoice notifications to the website so your customer can be notified immediately, automatically sync product images from SalesPad so that you only have to maintain those within the ERP, and export orders that were created in SalesPad out to the website for full customer order visibility. That way, if customers have to call in or email their reps to place special orders, this lets them get the same order status and history visibility on the website for all of their orders holistically. For payments, we've added new surcharge handling for PayFabric. So if you set up PayFabric to automatically calculate surcharges for credit card payments, that surcharge amount can now just automatically come into SalesPad and be applied to the order. We're currently actually expanding that further to support pay links, as well as a few different management options for posted invoice handling. So we expect to release all of that in January. And we've added some new Square payment options as well. Support for processing Square payment links in SalesPad, as well as Square payment processing in SalesPad Mobile. We have some new shipping options available in ShipCenter. Whenever carriers introduce new options that people want to use, we look at expanding our integrations. So we support a few new low-cost shipping options like FedEx One Rate and USPS Ground Advantage, which can help you save a ton on freight. We understand that businesses don't just run on an ERP. There's an entire ecosystem of apps and services that you depend on, and we'll keep connecting SalesPad to these other systems so you can keep your data at your fingertips and your processes flowing smoothly and automatically. All right, so we are 100% committed to SalesPad for the long haul. We came out with a ton of impactful new features in 2025, and we're not slowing down for 2026. We're hard at work on our 2026 roadmap, and we're evaluating options like bringing more AI into SalesPad, improving the user experience by simplifying flows and reducing clicks, modernizing SalesPad's UI, quality of life upgrades like bringing more GP operations into SalesPad, ongoing stability and performance enhancements, and supporting data migrations. So if you have any thoughts or ideas for us, we would love to hear what's most important for you. You can always connect with your account manager or submit ideas in our Feature Ideas portal. And with that, I'll pass it back to Mike. So Mike, what are your thoughts on the future of SalesPad?
Yeah, thank you, Alyssa. Our investments in SalesPad have clearly not slowed down, right? We're extremely bullish. We know a lot of companies depend on us on a daily basis, and we love where we're going with the product. To summarize, I think for the audience, we're a little ahead of schedule, I think, which is good. You have options, and you are in control. You should feel confident in whichever mission critical direction is right for you, whether that's remaining on GP, migrating to a new ERP, or partnering with us, as Alyssa just mentioned, to extend SalesPad into even more of the GP capabilities that you depend on today. And speaking of that, I'm not sure, Paul, if this is something that you would ask me before, but I can't tell you the number of times I've actually been asked, why don't we just become a full ERP ourselves so our customers can stay on SalesPad with that peace of mind that you mentioned? It's something that's come up many, many times, and perhaps we'll ask the audience for some opinion on that. So we're extremely bullish on the future. I think the summary that Paul gave on technically how GP will continue to be supported is super valuable. And we want to be helpful to our customers and everyone on the call as much as we can be. And at the end of the day, you've earned as customers the right to have stability, control, the right to decide your own future. And Cavallo will stand with you for the next decade and beyond. We will support our customers on GP. We will continue to strengthen SalesPad. We will continue to give you and work with you around your options so you can always remain in control of when and how you change your systems. And that commitment is completely unwavering. We've been very consistent about that, and we will continue to be so. Our founder, if you don't know this, we're a private company. And our founder, Pete, the guy that you saw there at the beginning, remains an active, involved owner of this business, and he's also committed. We share the passion and vision for this company and where we're going, and that passion includes our support and passion for SalesPad and our customers on GP. Last but not least, I referenced a little while ago an upcoming webinar in January. So at the end of January, we're going to have 2 customers on to share their own experience. Paul, thank you for sharing yours today. Super glad to have you as someone who used to be a customer with all the things that you've done with lightbulbs.com and then bringing that to us. And then at the end of January, we'll have New Star Sourcing and Millborn Seeds to share their story. So we're excited about that. And again, I invite any of you to get in touch with us if you want to dig in more deeply on the future of SalesPad, GP, help with your decision making. We are here to help. And I think with that, Elizabeth, we can move to questions.
Yeah, thank you so much to all of our presenters. We have a few questions that have come in so far. So if you have a burning question, now is a perfect time to use that Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen and jot it down. First, Melissa, you asked, is the session being recorded? Yes, we're recording it. So I'm sorry you missed part of it, but you will be able to revisit and view the entire webinar very soon after today's event. So thank you for that. Let's see. So I think this question to me is someone's looking for a pulse check. So GP excluded, what ERP system is being utilized by the majority of SalesPad's customers? So I think what this person's asking is like, hey, what are you guys hearing? Should folks choose to migrate to a different ERP? Where are you hearing that people are going? Or Mike, maybe you could give us high level pulse on what you're hearing.
Yeah, I think that what you're seeing with Business Central in the world right now is a lot of growth. The vast majority of that growth is not coming from migrations. The vast majority of that growth, as I talk to partners and ISVs, is coming from startups, upgrades from QuickBooks, et cetera. This question to me says, from a SalesPad perspective, who are we primarily serving outside of just GP customers? And I would say probably next up would in fact be Business Central. We've also got our Profit Max platform, which is you could think of it as a decision intelligence platform for driving superior decision making. Our intention is actually to connect that to any ERP. So we have users on Acumatica, Infor, two different versions of Infor, NetSuite. We have a number of them. And I think all of those are, again, depending on a given business's decisions and their constraints and their priorities and business case, those are all different platforms that may work for you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mike. See a couple technical questions that I'm going to direct to Alyssa. So is Customer IQ going to be included in the base version of SalesPad, or is it an added module? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, so it is an add-on module. If you have our Profit Max platform, then you just have to connect with us and you can have Customer IQ that's included within the Profit Max platform bundle. Or if you don't have the full Profit Max platform, you could purchase just Customer IQ as an add-on for SalesPad.
Great, short and sweet, to the point. Let's see. I'm going to ask this question. It's pretty specific to Square, but I recognize that there may be multiple customers on today's call using Square's integration with us. So, Alyssa, any idea if we are going to make the physical gift card purchase process with Square integrated? Is that on your radar? Or maybe we need to chat a little bit further with this gentleman and
Yeah, that is on my radar. It is a request that has come up with a handful of different people, I believe. It gets interesting because of how the process needs to work with Square. There might be some potential for us to do some kind of SalesPad integration with that to make it easier. So yeah, I would love to hear more about what you would intend and what you would like in that kind of integration.
Okay, so I can see there are several questions that are maybe a little more specific to your business. If that is the case, we're going to follow up with you individually. Let's see, here's one more technical that might impact others. Is there a way to merge multiple documents into one? It would be different master numbers. That would be a very good feature. So maybe a suggestion too, if it's not available yet.
Yes, that one is also on our radar. That one comes up pretty frequently. So it is one that we've looked into a bit. It can get fairly complex, which is a main reason why we haven't actively tackled it yet. But I love to hear that that is something that people are still interested in.
Awesome. Let's see, you got a couple Business Central questions with like license swaps. This person, we're considering a Business Central migration. How will Cavallo support me? So I know Cavallo's come out a little bit. We're talking about license swaps. Mike, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think just stated simply, the goal is to basically allow our users to move to Business Central without an increase in their sort of base fees. Apples to apples, we expect there to be no increase.
Perfect. Yep. And if there's any further questions on that, I'd say definitely reach out to your account manager and we can work with you on that and walk you through what that looks like. So yeah, are the new features for Inventory Manager that you covered, Alyssa, are those going to be available for existing customers? How do you move forward with accessing those? I think it might have something to do with maybe an upgrade, but I'll let the expert speak to that.
Yes, that's exactly right. So the inventory manager features, all the ones I was talking about on that slide, those are all included in inventory manager. So if you already have inventory manager, you would just need to upgrade to have access to those features. Some of them get fairly complicated, especially when we start talking about directed picking and batch picking. So for those, it might be helpful to engage with us in a consulting project so we can help you with all of that configuration. But we do have documentation on the website as well that goes into all of the different configuration options so you can start looking at all of that.
Okay, awesome. Lots of really, really good questions. So I'm going to direct this one to Mike. Is Cavallo planning to offer any incentives for those who are choosing to stay on GP or for even eventually moving to BC?
Offering any incentives. Well, I'd like to think that we are creative and we are thinking about what's best for our customers. So it's not something that I think we've actively built in, but if we think it's beneficial, mutually beneficial, it's certainly something that we consider. That'd be one where I'd actually like to speak with someone who is maybe asking that question. Feel free to contact your account manager or contact us. We can talk more deeply about what you're trying to achieve. Happy to have that conversation.
Let's see, we got this one. How much risk is involved in moving from GP to BC compared to staying put? I think that's dependent on your business, but I don't know. Paul, can I shoot that one over to you?
Yes, absolutely. I went down this road a couple of years ago as I looked at potential migration from our GP infrastructure to BC, and our business had a data file in SQL of over 200 gigabytes, which is fairly large. Millions of customers, millions of sales documents, and even Microsoft themselves has stated this isn't a natural upgrade path, it's a complete re-implementation. And so, like Mike alluded to earlier in this presentation, you have to look at data, you have to look at processes, you have to kind of start your business over from scratch in a way. And so moving everything from one platform to another while going from on-prem to cloud, everything is completely different and unique. And so the risk is inherently attached to the size and complexity of your business, right? And so you have to kind of go down this process here and analyze months and months of case studies, looking at who else has gone down this road, looking at how do you replace feature functionality and have parity in your new environment. And so the answer is that it can actually be really quite risky. And I've done about 3 ERP implementations myself, and it's not for the lighthearted. So it's something that requires a lot of planning. It can be done. And we talked earlier, I think one of the questions, like, is there this natural path from GP? And there really isn't, right? This is just a cloud-based ERP solution owned by Microsoft. So obviously it's a natural path if you want to stay inside the Microsoft ecosystem and tie into a lot of the apps that you're using in a Microsoft environment. But really you have to embrace the fact that it's a complete re-implementation and therefore has to be treated with the utmost level of care and respect.
Thank you so much, Paul. So Mike,
I would add to that I would add to that real quick that I think Paul's answer was spot on, but also for our companies, our customers that are actively thinking about this decision, if we can be helpful, let's assume you've decided to move. We are quite willing and want to help you be successful, no matter where you go. So if we can be, feel free to reach out, and we're happy to go through sort of how to think about the risks, how to mitigate those risks, looking at the requirements, the business case, et cetera. We want to be helpful as a provider to you.
For sure. Let's see. So someone is asking for examples of what we're hearing from our customers as to why their migrations or implementations of a new ERP maybe are not going well. So we heard that 55 to 75% quite often fail. But like, what are you hearing? Maybe Mike, you probably have heard some feedback from customers. Like, what are some of the reasons why they're failing?
Yeah, I think in some cases, not maybe not all, but in some cases, I think that business owners are maybe misinformed about the simplicity of moving. I think that they oftentimes will have, someone who's a trusted advisor who maybe doesn't have the same objectives. And they make it sound like, well, it's super easy to move from GP to BC. Or they might say that when the customer says, yeah, but what about my SalesPad workflows? They say, well, BC can do all of that. Like that's where we're trying to come in, to be quite honest, to sort of deal with the, I'll say, misinformation about it. Some of the common reasons that I think we see are underestimating business complexities. Organizations often map only the visible things. They don't actually understand at a deep level what's going on. They may not realize that they're going to lose all that customization, the automations, the integrations. Maybe there's a poor fit between the ERP and the actual business model that they weren't aware of. So I think inadequate requirements gathering is a very common thing. Unrealistic timelines. Change management is a huge thing here. I think failing to manage that organization change is a big deal. One ERP implementation I did many, many years ago, one of the executives had a pretty good idea. He actually wanted to find the adversary in the organization about the implementation and put them in charge of change management. It's sort of an interesting thing. If you can get the adversary behind it and leading the change management charge, kind of an interesting idea. Oftentimes there's a weak data migration strategy. You got to think about inadequate testing, environment setup. I would also say you don't want to over-rely on your vendor or your VAR. Don't over-rely on an outside party for your success. And I think lastly, maybe just misalignment around the ROI, the benefits, the business case, making sure that there's a very clear and compelling business case to make the change.
Thanks, Mike. Paul, I have a follow-up to one of your answers. You were talking about the risk involved in upgrading to BC and the shift from on-prem to cloud. Does this mean that a shift to Business Central requires our SQL database to be hosted in the cloud versus on-prem?
Yeah, so the way to look at it is that GP natively runs on-prem. It's usually in a server room somewhere inside of a facility. We love Ingevity's Power GP Online solution as they're looking at providing cloud-hosted solutions for GP, where they can take your GP server and host it on the cloud, therefore giving you remote access from different locations in the world and allowing for more cloud-based apps. So the way to look at it is GP is on-prem, but it can be exposed to the cloud. Consequently, you can take your GP database and data source connection and share that out to the cloud. And so even though GP is an on-prem solution, there are many different cloud-based solutions for it. And we even have a lot of different SalesPad adjacent programs that we have as well that can kind of help take that data and accessibility and push it out to the cloud. And so you're really looking at two completely different environments, but there are actually a lot of options in creating a cloud-based infrastructure for kind of an older on-prem solution such as GP.
Thank you, Paul. Let's see. When time comes, and when the time comes, if this organization decides to go to Business Central, how could or will SalesPad customizations migrate? They are expressing that they have a lot of customizations that are specific to their business. And I don't think they're alone. I think many of our customers have years and years of customizations created. So can we speak a little bit to kind of how the workflows might migrate? Maybe Mike or Alyssa?
Yeah, so for general customizations, I'll touch on that part because with customizations in SalesPad, it's largely things like scripting, custom SQL procedures. Maybe we've created custom integrations or screens for you. And really all of that lives within SalesPad. So BC, the back end is completely different from GP. Even just comparing those two, GP to BC, it's really not apples to apples. There's a lot of just deep structural differences in how the data works, differences between allocations in GP versus reservations in BC. Even the way that you reserve your inventory is different. So any kind of customizations that you've created for SalesPad, I would say are very likely to need to be recreated in BC. Or, I mean, BC does have an ecosystem of like ISVs who have created other solutions that build into the BC ecosystem. So potentially someone out there has solved your specific custom problem in a way that could be generally applicable. But that's where when you start looking at BC, you also have to take into account all of these other options that you might need to add in to make your process fully work.
Alyssa,
Awesome, thank you.
keep me honest here, Alyssa, but also I think the way that we think about sales, sort of the workflow, automation agent inside of SalesPad, I sort of think of that as the brain of the operation. And in Business Central, we have built sort of an analog product that in some ways is even easier to use for our customers. So for customers that choose on their own to go from GP to BC, we think our mission control, workflow, automation agent sort of product is perfectly suited to help manage that migration, actually to shorten the time frame, lower the cost, reduce the risk, and frankly, make for a better life in that migration. That product is built specifically for that reason and more.
Yeah, we have a couple questions specifically about customizations to specific businesses. So we may need to follow up with some of you to have more of a one-to-one conversation to learn more about your scenario. Let's see, Alyssa, going back to inventory manager, this might be a little specific to an organization, but what are some ways to do full inventory counts? For example, 10,000 SKUs in inventory manager. Best methods. Can you share the best methods for inventory counts? I don't know. Maybe Paul, you as a former distributor, maybe you have a couple best practices you can quickly share, but if not, that might be a follow-up.
Yeah, I mean, I've got lots of ideas on practices, not so much with the inventory manager tool, but
Okay.
obviously you can look at periodic cycle counts or shutting down the warehouse and doing full counts. Alyssa, I don't know if you have any quick tidbits on that and specifically on how inventory manager might approach that solution.
Yeah, to my understanding, people tend to set up their items to do cycle counts every so often. So some items that are higher touch might be monthly cycle counts, whereas some items that don't flow as frequently might be quarterly or annual cycle counts. So it's kind of a mixing of various things where you kind of are analyzing your items and which ones are flowing faster, which ones you keep higher quantities of at a given time, and then kind of optimizing when you would do those counts. So balancing, the workload, because it's going to take work to actually take time out of the warehouse to do that, while still striving for accuracy as much as possible. So I know there's various resources out there that could be helpful, or potentially we could do more of a one-on-one consultation.
Awesome. Perfect. Question around, let's see, if we eventually move to BC, will all of our analytics transfer directly? So I can answer that. I believe this person is referring to, I think they have the Profit Max platform. So the answer is yes. If you're a current GP customer and you're moving to Business Central or even Acumatica, NetSuite, Infor for that matter, the Profit Max platform will migrate with you seamlessly. So I believe that's what you're asking, but feel free to reach out and clarify if that's not the case. Okay, I think we've gotten through almost all of them. I apologize if we missed your question. We had a lot come in all at once, hot and heavy, which is amazing. So we will review these questions again and reach out to individuals if we feel like we need to elaborate on something. And of course, reach out to us if something is more pressing. I want to thank all of our presenters for presenting this information. I know our customers have been asking for it, and I feel like we are delivering. Most importantly, thank you to all of you for joining us. We greatly appreciate it. We appreciate your passion. This is our very last webinar of 2025, but be sure to keep an eye on our event calendar on the website so that you can be the first to see new events as they pop up. For example, the customer case study that we have coming up on January 26th with New Star Sourcing and Millborn Seeds. I'm very excited for that one. So the website is cavallo.com/events-schedule. That's where you can see all the previously recorded webinars as well as the upcoming ones in the future. So as we've mentioned, if you'd like to explore your organization's specific needs or have questions about what you heard today, don't hesitate to reach out to your account manager. If you're not quite sure who that is, just send an email to marketing@cavallo.com and I will personally make sure your email gets in the right hands. So once again, thank you for joining us. Happy holidays to everyone and best wishes in the new year.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.